if we get all this incredulity, we can make it more.
All right, come on.
We can make it more.
Kelly really wants to.
This was the plan. This was the
You
plan
want to get to
before.
the new kids concert?
I'm so sorry, but okay. We are at 7?
It's late after his name. It could be 5 seconds.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right, we're all set, right? You want to wait, or you want to? I mean, those new kids on the block, I got to,
We're texting them right now. They should
okay.
be here.
All right. Rules Committee will come to order. Today, we are reconvening to finish consideration of H.R. 3401. Last night, the committee heard over 2 hours of testimony on this bill from 9 witnesses. This legislation will deal with the humanitarian crisis that this president has created at the border and get aid there as quickly as possible. It will fund necessities like legal assistance, food, water, and medical services for unaccompanied children, and ensure this Congress is conducting proper oversight of this administration so the rights and dignity of migrants are respected. So, now, let me turn to our ranking member, Mr. Cole, for any remarks he'd like to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We're meeting once again on H.R. 3401, the emergency supplemental for the humanitarian crisis at the southern border. I said most of what I had to say about this bill last night, but to be clear, I think it's a real shame and frankly a mistake that the majority is taking a problem on which there's so much bipartisan agreement and is putting forward a partisan solution. When we adjourned last night amid reports that the Congressional Hispanic and Progressive caucuses were revolting against the bill, I'd hoped this would provide an opportunity to work together in a bipartisan manner. But instead, this bill tacked further to the left to satisfy the liberals in the Democratic caucus, who are unwilling to do anything that meets President Trump's request. Both Republicans and Democrats agree that we need additional funding to address the crisis on the southern border. There was a real chance to produce a bipartisan bill here that could provide the resources that are needed and it could easily become law. Instead, the majority is pushing through a bill that does not have bipartisan support, that was not drafted with Republican input, and that will not be signed into law as is. Perhaps more troubling, my friends in the majority are using same-day authority to make changes to this bill at the last minute. My good friend, the chairman, had a term for this procedure in the last Congress. He called it, quote, martial law, unquote. But today, the majority uses martial law to propose new changes to this bill, ones that we've had little opportunity to review. While I appreciate that my friends are finally recognizing the urgency of this problem after Republicans have been ringing alarm bells for months, I think that pushing through last-minute changes to a bill drafted in the dead of night with no input from the minority is the recipe for disaster. Where we have an issue like the one we are currently facing, the humanitarian crisis on the southern border, where both Republicans and Democrats agree on what is needed, then I would urge the majority to work with the minority to produce a bipartisan solution. We do not have the time to waste on purely political exercises. This institution works best when we work together. No better time to realize that than now in the situation we face today. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. And are there, the chair is in receipt of a motion from the distinguished gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Perlmutter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move, pardon me, the committee grant H.R. 3401, the Emergency Supplemental Appropriations for Humanitarian Assistance and Security at the Southern Border Act 2019, a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that the amendment printed in the Rules Committee report shall be considered as adopted. The rule provides that the bill, as amended, shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill as amended. The rule provides that Clause 2E of Rule 21 shall not apply during consideration of the bill. And finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
As we just heard from the gentleman, the rule provides for consideration of H.R. 3401 under a closed rule and self-executes the manager's amendment. You heard the motion from the gentleman from Colorado. Are there any amendments or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move that the committee provide an open rule for H.R. 3401. Mr. Chairman, we just received the revised manager's amendment at 4:57 p.m., a completely insufficient amount of time for members to have an opportunity to fully understand the changes. Additionally, this amendment places significant new burdens on the administration without providing any additional resources to implement these new mandates. Programs are already struggling with the current appropriation. Additional mandates without additional resources to fulfill them is a recipe for failure. As written, this bill will not become law, and playing politics only does a disservice to those suffering from the humanitarian crisis at the border. Agencies will run out of money next week, and they're going to look to Congress for answers. This is going to be the case. Now more than ever, members should have the opportunity for a full and robust debate on the House floor. So I would urge that we provide them that opportunity by amending this and having an open rule, Mr.
Appreciate the gentleman's amendment. I would urge a no vote on that. Any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, the vote is on the Cole amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Hastings. Mrs. Torres. Mr. Perlmutter. No. Mr. Perlmutter, no. Mr. Ruskin. No. Mr. Ruskin, no. Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon, no. Mr. Murley. Mr. Murley, no. Ms. Shalala. Ms. Shalala, no. Mr. Desaulnier. Mr. Desaulnier, no. Mr. Cole. Aye. Mr. Cole, aye. Mr. Whittle. Aye. Mr. Whittle, aye. Mr. Burgess. Aye. Mr. Burgess, aye. Mrs. Lesko. Aye. Mrs. Lesko, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk report the total.
4 yeas, 7 nays.
Amendment is not agreed to. Are there any other amendments? Mr. Burgess.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I ask that the committee make an order and provide the necessary waivers for the amendment by Mr. Roy and myself to H.R. 3401. And this is the amendment that appropriates $800 million to the Secretary of Homeland Security to reimburse the state of Texas for all efforts undertaken to secure the border between the United States and Mexico.
You've heard the amendment from the gentleman from Texas. Any comments? I would just point out to the gentleman that But I guess there is a budgetary point of order against the gentleman's amendment, and so I would urge a no vote. I would also just say that, you know, I think all of us here want to be helpful to states that have been overburdened by some of the issues that have surrounded this immigration matter, and we'll look forward to working with you in the future. And I say that in spite of the fact that I remember we had a Massachusetts-related bill up here, and the gentleman said that he didn't like the fact that all the Massachusetts delegation were supporting the amendment, and therefore he would oppose it. And I thought that was kind of odd. And I'm opposing this not because of that, but I'm just pointing it out for the record. But,
Mr. Chairman, if
yeah.
I may, the Texas delegation is bipartisan, and this would give new Texas Democratic members
But we-
an opportunity to vote and help their governor with doing the work that the United States government should be doing but is not.
Well, I appreciate it. But anyway, I would urge a no vote on this. Any other discussion? Hearing none, the vote is on the Burgess Amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. No. Me, the chair, the noes have it. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Hastings. Mrs. Torres. No. Mrs. Torres, no. Mr. Perlmutter. No. Mr. Perlmutter, no. Mr. Raskin. No. Mr. Raskin, no. Ms. Scanlon. No. Ms. Scanlon, no. Mr. Morelli. No. Mr. Morelli, no. Ms. Shalala. No. Ms. Shalala, no. Mr. Desagne. Mr. Desagne, no. Mr. Cole. Aye. Mr. Cole, aye. Mr. Woodall. Aye. Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Burgess, aye. Mrs. Lesko. Aye. Mrs. Lesko, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
Amendment is not agreed to. Any other amendments? If there are none, then the question is now on the motion offered by the gentleman from Colorado. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Hastings. Mrs. Torres. Mrs. Torres, aye. Mr. Perlmutter. Aye. Mr. Perlmutter, aye. Mr. Raskin. Aye. Mr. Raskin, aye. Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Morelli. Mr. Morelli, aye. Ms. Shalala. Aye. Ms. Shalala, aye. Mr. Desagne. Mr. Desagne, aye. Mr. Cole. No. Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Woodall. No. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Burgess.
No.
Mr. Burgess, no. Mrs. Lesko. No. Mrs. Lesko, no. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk report the total.
8 yeas, 4 nays.
The ayes have it, the motion is agreed to. Accordingly, I will manage this for the majority, and Mr. Cole will for the minority. And I expect that we will be on the floor in the next 15 to 20 minutes. Without objection, the committee is adjourned.